Thank you for coming in. It's a bit of a coincidence. We had the PC leader here yesterday, so.
You think there's something interesting happening in Ontario these days?
Well, it is an interesting time, isn't it? I think the Premier has, to some extent, done both the opposition parties a favour in proroguing the legislature, because it seems to me, at least, it's given you about 4 months head start on what will almost certainly be an election campaign. Do you agree with that assessment? Are we having an election in the spring?
Well, it's hard to say, and at this point, what we've decided to do is continue on the path that we had set out already. We had decided that fall and winter would be going back to Ontarians and having a conversation about various issues and concerns that are still quite problematic in Ontario. So we launched a conversation about jobs a little while back, a bit of a consultation. Just the other day in Toronto on Tuesday, I launched a consultation on healthcare and did the Eastern Ontario launch just yesterday at Centretown Community Health Centre. Because what we were hoping to do was get some information from Ontarians, get some ideas, get some thoughts. What's good about healthcare, what's not so good about healthcare, what are some of your thoughts around how to make the healthcare system more responsive to your needs. And we were going to use that as a way of focusing in our work in the legislature over the fall term and the winter term. And of course, when the doors of the legislature got shuttered, we decided we were going to continue to do that work, and hopefully when the doors of the legislature reopen, we can use the information we've gathered and the ideas that we've put together from that conversation with Ontarians as our focus for the session. If we don't end up going back into the legislature and we end up into an election campaign, then we've done a lot of groundwork in terms of putting together what it is that we're going to talk to the people about on a campaign trail.
Do you think we need an election?
Well, I think that there's a lot of things that we can still get accomplished in the province. I think that it's unfortunate that the Liberals have decided to shut down the legislature while they go in the repair shop, and the rest of Ontario kind of has to sit and wait in neutral while they finish their business. There's a lot of real problems out there that remain, and they're not going away with the legislature closed down. Really, the prorogation was more about the Liberals focusing on themselves, avoiding the controversy over the gas plant scrutiny that was coming, and kind of trying to sweep all of those things under the carpet as they went off and did their own, their own internal work. And it's unfortunate because, when a government is all about their own political well-being and their own political backsides, when that's their focus, then I think everybody loses. And there was great opportunity to get some things done in Ontario. The government had just actually started to say that they agreed with some of the things that we were bringing to the table and wanted to see the implementation of for example, a banning of kids using tanning beds, kids under 18. They said that's a good idea. We should think about implementing that. We were hopefully going to embark on a review of the LHINs, which is long overdue and needed to be done in Ontario. They had agreed with us that we needed to have a hard cap on CEO salaries in the hospital sector, and we were thinking that they were going to start implementing that idea. But with the prorogation, all of that stuff is on stall, and it's unfortunate because those things still have to be dealt with.
Is all that not enough to vote no confidence at the earliest opportunity?
Well, we've I think been doing a good job of getting results for people in a minority situation. I mean, we had a choice when the minority parliament was put in place by the people of Ontario back in October of last year. We could either roll up our sleeves and get to work on trying to get results in that context, or we could throw up our hands and walk away. And we decided to do the former. And I think we were quite successful. We were able to achieve some real positive changes to that budget that made it more reflective of the concerns that Ontarians were facing. We were able to get significant investment in childcare in Ontario. We were able to get the fairness tax on folks who are earning the most in Ontario to try to help with the challenges that the province is facing. We were able to get some transitional money for smaller and rural hospitals in terms of transformation in healthcare. There were a number of pieces that we were able to get. We were finally able to convince the government to at least look at the idea of incentivizing job creators in Ontario instead of across-the-board corporate tax cuts, which simply haven't been working. And in fact, even the Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney has agreed that the dollars are sitting in on the balance sheets of these companies. They're flush with cash and they're not reinvesting. So the productivity investments aren't coming, the job creation is not happening, and yet cash reserves are growing and growing and growing, and that's a problem for Ontario's economy and for Canada's economy.
Good. I'm struck by the difference in approach between your party and the PCs, who've unleashed a flurry of white papers and policy announcements, and I think what is emerging, and whether you agree with it or not, is a fairly clear and coherent program for where they want to take the province. And I've heard a lot from the NDP about consulting and listening, but I wonder if if there's any concern that that appears indecisive. If people want to have your ideas for policy and would look for that kind of thing in a future premier.
Well, it's interesting because I think people just need to look at the work we've already done to see what our policy is all about. I mean, we've actually been implementing our policy in the context of a minority government, and we've been doing that quite successfully. And so part of our obligation, though, is not only to say, so here's what we were thinking the last time around. Here's what we've been able to achieve in terms of our platform, because we were able to achieve a number of pieces of our platform through this minority process, and we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to push to try to get real results for people when the doors of the legislature reopen. Having said that, we are absolutely going to come to the public with a platform, but we are going to make sure that platform is in tune with them and reflective of their concerns and their needs. And so I think we've been very successful at demonstrating exactly what we would do if we were in government, because we've been able to achieve some of those pieces through the minority process. But certainly there's plenty of time for a platform to come forward, and we're going to take our time to listen to Ontarians, and I'm not too proud to actually have that conversation and hear what they have to say and incorporate their ideas and concerns in our plan going forward.
John, do you have a question?
Let's talk farming for a second. I keep hearing from the Federation of Agriculture and other farm type groups about the Species at Risk Act and the impact of that on farming. For instance, you have to work on a barn. There are restrictions now. Cutting hay is there's a temporary moratorium, but they are saying you are not going to be able to cut hay. Mm-hmm. Fairly simple, basic farm product. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, there's a number of challenges I think that the agricultural sector faces, and I just met with the OFA just the other day in their conference and was talking to them about their frustration with what they call overregulation. And I think that we have to find a balance between making sure that our environment is protected and that our food sources are properly regulated and there's proper oversight there, but also acknowledging that there are different scales of farming that occur in Ontario, and how do we make sure that we're sensitive to supporting particularly smaller operations, because we don't want to lose the family farm. We want to be able to continue to have family farming in Ontario. And so, of course, I now have someone who was an active farmer on my caucus, which is John Vantoff. He was a dairy farmer in Timiskaming and Cochrane. He's got a very good relationship with the agricultural community. In fact, he was the chair of the ploughing match a couple of years ago, and so he is bringing a lot of insight and a lot of detailed perspective to our caucus on some of those issues, and we're having very vigorous discussions about those very things, because on the one hand we certainly want farmers and the farming community to help us achieve some of those broader goals, but at the same time we don't want to put them in a position where they're the stewards of responsibility in that regard, to the point where they can't farm anymore. I mean, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And as Ontarians, I think, look more towards the opportunity to buy locally grown food, and to support food that's coming from our own breadbasket, if you will. We have to get it right in terms of making sure that we support the agricultural sector. And it's interesting because one of the things I find quite, I think, frustrating is that oftentimes we look at agricultural communities, rural communities, as all about farming, and we forget that they're also communities. they also have other needs. And so if you're not helping smaller rural communities with things like infrastructure challenges, because they're now responsible for roads and bridges that they can't afford to maintain, if you're not helping to make sure that they have access to good quality health care, that there's childcare available for them, that there's schools that their kids can go to. If you start pulling these things away from rural communities, then you tear apart the fabric that makes those communities thrive, and in a way you're undermining the capacity of farm families to continue to keep those communities vibrant. And so I think agricultural policy, yes, is about the species at risk piece, and some of the regulatory burden that is currently frustrating some farming families and some farm operations. But it's also the bigger picture in rural communities as well, and so we have to never forget that it's not just about the family farm. It's about the farming, the larger farming community as a whole.